hearing things, Muse. Airplanes or something, I don't know. Now I'm hearing geese. Are you hearing geese? Or is it just me? Maybe that's apropos. Because what I want to talk about today is something that I personally, as a writer and even an actor, deal with a lot. As I go through puberty for the second time, third time, fourth time. I don't know. Anyway, okay. What I want to talk about today with you, Muse, I'm going to call speaking through your character. It's probably not what it's really called. There's probably a name for it, but I learned how to write from the School of Hard Knocks. Well, okay, there's some truth to that. But we won't get into that, Muse, because that's a discussion for another day. This came about because the other night I was working on Fear 3. Fear Toi. As you know, the way I write is, for example, tonight, because I write all my fiction at night, because, under the cover of darkness just seems to work for me. Tonight I will sit down and I will read what I wrote last night. And I'll tweak it if necessary. And the reason why I do that is because it gets me back into the flow of what I was writing. So what I write tonight won't be disjointed and it'll flow, as I said. But that's not what I'm talking about. So the other night, I sat down and I read what I had written the previous night. And as I read it, the first thing that popped into my head was, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, but it was, okay, wow, that was really simple. That didn't say much. I mean, yeah, it moved the plot along, but it didn't live up to what I expect from my writing. And I know this is going to sound silly, and some of you listening into this conversation with me and my muse might roll your eyes and say, oh, geez. Ugh. Oi. Whatever. As I read what I had written, after I thought this is simple, the idea popped into my head was, this doesn't say anything. What I just read, says nothing. Yes, again, it moves the plot along, which is a good thing, which is a great thing, which is always necessary, but it didn't say anything. It didn't have anything to add to the conversation besides moving the plot along. This is where it gets a little tricky here. So this is personal. It's personal preference here. I, as an author and as an actor even, I always like to say something. I always like to speak through my character. And in this instance, it's Vega, who is the main character in the series, who also happens to be the narrator. And Vega didn't say anything. He didn't make any, not a single important point. He said nothing profound in this 1,200, 1,300 word block that I had written. And I was disappointed. So I went back and I reread it again, and I thought, I've got to add some depth. Not necessarily depth to character. And this is where it gets really kind of muddy. Because I, again, as an author, like to speak, as I said, through my characters. And I have also been very, very forthright in saying that I believe that art should entertain, educate, and enlighten. And I think it has to do all three things. That's why when you're sitting down in front of the television and you're watching your favorite comedy or something, you'll always, almost always, find a nugget of truth to be found. It will be a lesson. Even comedy wants to teach us something, right? For example, there's a wonderful television series called American Housewife. It's very funny. It's hilarious. The two main characters, the mother and the father, Dietrich Bader and Katie Mixon, I think, or Mixon, something like that. Anyway, they work so well together. They're very funny. And it's a comedy. It's a straight up comedy. But in every episode, there's something to be learned. Most often, it's about parenthood. And every good television show, be it comedy, drama, action, thriller, horror, whatever, has something to teach you. And I take that very seriously. So I'm always wanting to make sure that there is something to be gleaned from my words, something that a reader may not know directly. It may be slightly subliminal. It might be woven into the warp and weft of a few paragraphs or something, but there's always something to be learned. Now, that's not to say I'm hammering people over the head with a lesson. That's not what I'm doing. And I'm not preaching. I don't hop up onto my soapbox before I write. I use my soapbox for other things. In fact, I have shoes with soles made of soapbox. And I wear them all the time. But I don't use that in my writing. I don't soapbox, I don't grandstand, I don't do any of those things in my writing. But at the same time, I always want to offer a little kernel of something that will kind of wiggle its way under the consciousness of the reader and maybe teach them a lesson. Or not necessarily just teach them a lesson, but give them something to think about. And to me, that is incredibly important. Shakespeare did it all the time. Shakespeare's works are rampant with those seeds that he planted to make people think. Now, I realize that what that does, I think, this is just me talking here, but I believe what that does is it takes your work into the realm of literary fiction. And to me, that's a good thing. I want all of my fiction, be it my cannibal series, the Fear series, which is about snarky cannibals. It's a horror comedy, but even still, I want to lift it into the realm of literary fiction. Because I think, from my perspective, that gives a book depth. Because I think that there are multi layers of depth. There's depth of character. There's depth of story. There's depth of storytelling. And there's depth of writing. And I prefer to have all of those layers of depth in every book I write. And so, ergo, I speak through my characters. Yes, it can get a little tricky. And yes, there are readers out there that don't like it. And I get that. You can't please everybody. I don't try to please everybody at all. It's not my shtick. If I were trying to please everybody, I would be writing in something completely different. I'd be writing a different genre. I'd be writing a different style. That's just who it is. That's just me. And I do the same thing as an actor. Now, as an actor, it's different because as an actor, I'm speaking other people's words. So I have to speak, I have to be faithful to the words that the playwright has written and to the intention of the words that the playwright has written, as well as what the director wants. But at the same time, I can add my own I can add my own creativity, my own layering to the character to give it depth and to hopefully plant the seeds of a lesson. And maybe not a lesson. Plant the seeds of a thought. Plant these seeds of an idea that may blossom into something great. And that's, for me, that is the greatest thing about being an artist. That I can plant the seeds of an idea into someone else. And that idea will then grow into something great for that other person. That I might, as an artist, might inspire someone to do something amazing. And who's to say what that amazing is? Maybe I've written something and let's just say, let me give you an example here. Let's just say that and you'll have to pardon me. This is just the idea that popped in my head. So let's just say a bigot picks up one of my books and reads it, and something that I have written in that book plants the seed in that bigot's head, that bigot's brain, and it grows. And it continues to grow until that bigot says, maybe my point of view is wrong. Let me consider something else. And that bigot no longer is a bigot. I mean, what greater thing is there to cause somebody that hates to no longer hate? It doesn't get any better than that. Well, okay, maybe I have had instances. I've had people who have reached out to me to say that something in a book of mine empowered them to realize that they can do something that they didn't think they could do before. That doesn't mean something physical. That means to overcome something. It doesn't get better than that. Helping people overcome things, even if only by planting the seed of strength and resiliency in their head. And that's not me patting myself on the back. That's me patting those other people on the back. Because all I did was plant the seed for this. All I did, I spoke through my character. I planted a seed of thought, and the reader picked up on it, allowed it to grow, and made greatness out of it for them. That's on them. The pat on the back goes to them, not me. I was just a catalyst for something. A catalyst for change. So yeah. So after I read that section of Fear 3 and realized I didn't say anything in this. This is just nothing. I went back and I gave it something. I went back and I planted some seeds. Because I love planting seeds. Airplane. What's that airplane doing? It's a conspiracy. Anyway, Muse, that's all I got this time. I hope that anyone listening to our little conversation, I know the conversation is mostly one-sided, but yeah, you can chime in if you want. But I hope that anyone listening to our conversation found something useful in it. And I realize that I take a different approach to my art, but everybody does, to be honest. This is my approach. I hope it helps you. I hope you learned something. And if you do, guess what? That, my friends, is awesome.